Hey friends, I'm Christy, and you're listening to Rock the Damn Boat, a podcast for women who are done playing small. If you've been shrinking to keep the peace or waiting for permission to want more, climb aboard because we are going to make some waves together. Don't forget to follow or subscribe so you're never left stranded on the shore. And if you want a more connected experience, visit thrivewithchristy.com to learn more about the Thrive Collective, a community that combines boat rocking energy with the grounding effects of yoga and breathwork with live calls and classes. Now on to the show. Well, today's show is a little role reversal of sorts because when my guest, Sondra Primeaux, had a podcast with Tammy Salas called The Unruffled, I was on that show. Now here we are years later, and I'm thrilled to have Sondra on the show. She is such a creative person, has become a great friend, and love everything that she has to offer this world with her creativity. And she is also an Enneagram expert and has really dived deep into the Enneagram. And so, with us being a rock the damn boat, sort of getting out of people pleasing mode, I wanted her to share a little bit of her wisdom on the Enneagram, how maybe it can help twos and nines to rock the damn boat. Welcome to the show, Sondra. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad to be talking to you today.
Yeah, well, we met having sobriety in common. You had the show The Unruffled, which was a great resource for me early in my sobriety. I've been sober since 2018. How many years of sobriety do you have now?
Well, in July, which I'm feeling pretty confident that I won't drink
Right?
between now and then, I will have about 12 years.
12 years.
Yes, yes. So I haven't had a sip of alcohol since July 13th, 2014.
Excellent. Congratulations, because
Thank
I'm
you.
confident you'll make it. And I think this will air in July. So you will be there and we'll be celebrating 12 years, a dozen. That's
I
incredible.
know. I know. It feels, yeah, like, it's just my life. I don't know.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
there's certainly an element of it that I'm sure people think, oh, do you think about drinking all the time? It's like, no, but I worry about a lot of other things. So at least I just don't have
Sure,
alcohol in the mix.
sure. And I think about a lot of ways to alleviate my pain and suffering all the time, trust me. However, I'm often confronted with all the many reasons why alcohol would not ever be a good choice for my alleviation of pain and suffering. Mostly because it causes more pain and suffering for me.
Yes, that I can understand. And I think too, if you're like me, you have made enough friends in sobriety and have people that you're plugged into that you always could have someone to talk to about if you needed to. One of the ways for me that you are a boat rocking role model is your fashion sense, your commitment to sustainable fashion. I have used meditation cushions in my yoga studio and on a retreat that were made with upcycled fabrics. So tell us a little bit about your sense of style and then also that idea of recycling and upcycling fabrics and fashion.
Yeah, so I've always had I guess you call it a individualistic sense of style, I guess, since I was a teenager even. I was thrifting, definitely before it was trendy. As a matter of fact, I mean, I'm old too. I'm Gen X and I was born and raised in a pretty small town in East Texas. If you thrifted there, it usually meant that you were of a certain socioeconomic status. And so it was definitely wasn't anything considered cool or trendy or anything like that. And some of my thrifting was out of necessity. My parents did not have a lot of money to give me to shop for new Jordache jeans and things like that. I got 2 pair for a birthday once, and that was the extent of that. So when I got my driver's license, I discovered thrifting, and it like opened my world quite a bit and sort of led me in a direction of, oh, my style is something that I can personally curate, and it is something that can uphold my confidence, so to speak. So, yeah, so I've always loved to mix vintage with more maybe more current fashion, and I just kind of dress how I want to dress. I've recently, I don't know if we'll get into this, but I just finished up my first year as a public school teacher. And so, first of all, it was fun to get dressed and leave the house every day. But secondly, I have found that my style has sort of changed a little bit because, I can't wear a tattered slip or whatever to go teach high school. And then I just turned 57, and it's interesting that my style, I'm just discovering, oh, wait, my style has kind of changed a little bit. Like there's some things in this closet that I don't really want. They're really cool, but I don't really want to wear them anymore. So that's another thing that I've always liked about style is you're okay. It's okay to change your style too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't necessarily love the term that being over 50 means that you have no fucks left, because I
Right.
really have a lot of fucks left, but I use them selectively, put it that way.
Yes.
And my style is one of those things that, yeah, I have no fucks left about that. So anyway, yeah.
I love that. I think that I've really been mindful of the word evolve and evolution lately, and trying to be okay with how different things in my life are evolving as I just turned 51. And so, yeah, it's just different. My brain is different. What I like is different. What I care
Mhm.
about is different. So,
Absolutely.
and I've always been a very, I feel like it represents my Gemini personality, but it's like some days I'm bohemian, free-flowing dresses, free people, those things, and then other days I wanna be super edgy and wear combat boots and, so I'm like
Yeah,
I have a
exactly.
very
And the thing is
eclectic style.
you can mix
Yeah.
those things too. And that's the beauty of that's why I like fashion. And even though it seems like it's maybe a superficial quest sometimes, especially when things are so like heavy, I come back to the fact that it's just a way to be expressive.
Yes.
And I think that there's a lot of power and self-confidence and just sort of owning it.
Yes. This is maybe kind of a random question, but if somebody were, like, looking to create their own sense of style or figure out what that is, I guess it's just maybe it's what you feel good in. Because I know sometimes, like, I might want to try something on for size, and then I maybe feel a little awkward in it.
Right. I mean, I would say take somebody with you that you trust, that's not afraid to give you a really just objective opinion about something that you're wearing. Sometimes we need that, and it doesn't really have to do with like being flattering per se or anything like that, but you exude a certain bit of energy. And I think if you feel like uncomfortable in something that you're wearing, that's going to translate. And so if
Sure.
you take a friend that you really, really trust their opinion, and they'll give you like an honest opinion, I think that's probably a good place to start. Plus, go to a secondhand store, lower the stakes. You don't have to go to Nordstrom to do this, where you're committing a whole lot of income to a couple of pieces. Go to like a secondhand store where they have like maybe nicer clothing. That way, you don't feel like there's a whole lot at stake there as far as expense.
Yes. That's great advice because I think about I was with our friend Dawn the other day and we were out shopping. She helped me select the dress that I have on and
Oh,
some
very cool.
earrings. So yeah,
There
I
you
hadn't thought
go.
about
That's
how nice it
exactly what I
was
mean.
to have someone there who was like, I had one pair of earrings up and then I put these other pair up, and her nod when I put the second pair up was like, okay, yes, those are the
Yes.
ones. I'm in rural Texas, middle of nowhere, so I rarely have people to go shopping with me. So it was a nice treat. Well, I'm totally going to shift gears here because I also wanted to have you on because of your knowledge of the Enneagram, and you have gone so far as to do some learning from Suzanne Stabile, the Enneagram godmother. Is that what she calls herself? I can't
That
remember.
is her nickname, uh-huh,
Yes.
and I actually the cohort that I was involved in was actually with her husband and
Okay.
another Enneagram expert named Hunter. It was about the Enneagram for sure, but it was also about contemplation, and, so it was a little, like, a tangential topic with combined with the Enneagram, but I have been studying the Enneagram for almost as long as I've been sober. So
Wow.
I discovered the Enneagram pretty much right after I got sober. And I have like, the more you know, the more you don't know. That's the kind of, that's the thing about the Enneagram. And so while I appreciate you calling me an expert, I don't know if I'm necessarily an expert. However, I have been studying it intensely for a very long time.
Yeah, I have listened to her podcast. I've read a couple of books on it, but I'm sure I feel like my knowledge is scratching the surface. And I talked recently on the show on some of my shorter episodes about twos and nines because I've taken the you pronounce it ready, the RHETI test is
Think so.
that's from
I
the
think
Enneagram Institute.
Institute. Okay.
And I don't know if that's the most accurate as far as Enneagram tests
You
go.
know, there's probably a lot of online tests now. I would say it's a decent place to start. However, I would caution folks that are really interested in it to go a little bit deeper than that. Sometimes the test can be a good way to eliminate numbers where you
Mm,
can go, oh, I'm definitely not a 3 or I'm definitely not an 8. And I think that's a good start, but I'll just say from personal experience, it took me a whole year to figure out my number. And when the very first test I took, which I believe was the Enneagram Institute test, I typed as a 9. That would be my only caution. Wherever you land through that test, I would suggest if you're really interested in learning about the Enneagram and learning about yourself through the lens of the Enneagram, I would say to go a little bit deeper, to grab a book. One of, maybe one of Suzanne Stabile's books. There's a great podcast called Around the Circle that I think they do a really good job. I think they even have a podcast that says "Start Here" or something like that, and it's a
okay.
really good breakdown of the different types. Because the thing about the Enneagram is that you will hear a lot of talk about behaviors. And my behavior as a 7 might look like similar to some of your behaviors as a 2. In fact, we're both optimistic numbers. However, we have very different motivations, you and I do. And so that is the thing that you're looking for in the Enneagram. You're looking for the why underneath, the why you do what you
Okay.
do, why that person does what they do, because that is the essential part of the Enneagram. The Enneagram is such a good tool because it is dynamic and there's a lot of personality testing systems out there. However, the thing about the Enneagram is that it is a place that you can see growth in yourself. And so that is why I like the Enneagram so much. And I think that's why it's probably gained a lot of popularity, I hope, in that it is a very dynamic system in that way.
Yes, we won't get into it today, but there's wings and there's
Yeah,
times of
yeah,
stress and times of health and all of these things that you can
absolutely.
certainly go down and learn.
Absolutely. So while you are one number, you are not one number and you change to another number or anything like that. You are who you are and you were born that way. However, you can, yes, just like you said, share qualities with other numbers. And so that is exactly what makes it such a dynamic system.
What I like about it too, and I've talked a little bit about this on a previous episode, is like human design, for example, that's based on your star chart and when you were born and these things that are very true to your natural makeup.
Right.
Whereas I feel like Enneagram kind of blends nature and nurture. You have this
Yes.
idea of like, here's how you're wired, but then also here's this conditioning or programming that could influence how you are. So like for me, so two is a the helper, I always default to calling it the people pleaser, but it's the helper, because if you're healthy, you're
Right?
volunteering and you're helping
The
people
helper, the
for good. Yes, yes.
giver, the lover.
But but I
Right.
also say, like, well, I was also, born in Southern hospitality family, so certainly it was conditioned to me to be good, and how much of that is genetic
Sure.
versus upbringing. There's a blend of both.
And if you walked into any church in the South, especially, I bet you all of the women there would identify as a two because you're right. It can be cultural, absolutely. And it can be a nurtured thing. However, I guarantee you, not all those women are type twos. They can help. Sometimes they do help, but that is not their default programming.
Okay, most of my audience is people who are historically people pleasers or maybe quiet, shy, timid for some reason. I've tested equal twos and nines. Nine is the peacemaker, two is the helper. If we're talking to mostly an audience of twos and nines, what might that look like? So the helper's motivation might look like what as opposed to a nine peacemaker?
So the helper or the giver or again the lover, these are all just sort of names, but they just kind of help us identify a person who would type as a two. Their basic fear is being unworthy of love. They are some twos describe themselves as being like love hungry. Twos are all about relationships. That is just default programming in a two. They are meeting the needs of others. What do you need? What do you need? And what they are missing, and sometimes it is not identified at all, is what the two needs. Maybe a two might even be asked, what do you need? And that is like sometimes another language because a two doesn't know what they need, right? They can't name it sometimes. What they are doing when they are meeting the needs of others is that they are trying to meet a need that they are missing, but that they have to provide for themselves. And so it can often be about self love. And that's probably their big work in life is to figure out what they need to provide themselves with the love they need first so that other people can see them. Because that's the thing. Like, twos don't always realize, I don't think, that other people don't see them fully, right? Only because they don't express their needs. That's a primary give and take kind of thing in relationships, right? So if I'm your friend and you're not telling me what you need, then I don't fully know you, right? And so
Yes.
that's the thing that can block a two into getting what they want, to truly getting what they want.
That makes so much sense to me. And I think back to when I was younger, you called it low self-esteem at the time. And I don't know that we still use that terminology, but I always felt like, oh, I had low self-esteem. And it took me a long time. And I'm sure that had a lot to do with my alcohol addiction. It wasn't until sobriety that I learned how to be of service, but not in a self-sacrificing kind of way. I learned to do the inner work, and I had not done that before. But you're right, I wouldn't have known how to tell somebody what I needed before. For me, it was a lot of learning to let go of other people's opinions, or like I was so worried about what everybody else thought. Is that a typical two trait, or can it be attributed to
Yeah, they
multiple
were.
types?
Well, twos especially they are outward focused. Oftentimes they get their self-reflection based on other people's reactions to how well they are meeting other people's needs, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so, as a two, you articulated that better than I could have. But yes, that is exactly what is happening. They are seeking validation from other people. Like, did I love you well enough? Did I meet
Mm.
your needs well enough? And that is how they sometimes evaluate their own self worth.
I know how hard it was for me to make that shift. And so I can imagine anyone who is a two who is a people pleaser, it's going to be a lot of work to get out of that mode where you have almost these two things not working against you, but two things to continue to develop is not only what do I need, what is, what is on my heart. And I learned from a yoga teacher, so I always share with people like what my heart wants matters. And so I've had to take that to
Exactly.
heart.
You said that so well. What you need matters. Yes.
Yeah.
It
So I've
matters
done
to
a
me. Like, I would want to know, what do you need? And again, that helps me see you fully.
Yes. Well, that's a great way to put it for people who are stuck in that more insecure place of like what my heart wants matters. And then the second part of that is learning to articulate it. And so that's
Right.
probably the part where people who are historically people pleasers or have trouble speaking up worry about the reaction of the other person. And you just have to continue to say, my needs matter.
Right. You think that it will challenge the relationship, that it might sever that relationship because again, twos are all about relationships and they think by expressing their needs that's going to somehow disrupt or puncture that relationship. However, twos should know that it doesn't. Everybody wants to see you fully. We want to know what you need. We still love you. That love is
Yeah.
still there. Now it's a risk. It's always a risk to say what you need, right? Because you might be rejected. And that is just, a risk that I guess twos have to get comfortable with in
Mm-hmm.
order to reach that trajectory or that again self-actualization if that's where we're going. In order to reach that, that's what they have to confront.
Yes. Ah, that's a great way to put it. When you continue to flex that muscle, it starts to get a little bit easier. It has in my experience. And what I love too, and I know we're just gonna like talk briefly about, when twos are healthy and in a healthier place, they go toward four, which is creativity and individuality. And so I feel like that's where I know that's where I lean when I'm more tune into my writing or I'm more tuned into like this week I've been on this beautiful solo adventure and I've been hiking and doing whatever I want to do and it's
Right.
felt so rewarding. So there is, always I hate to use the word hope because it's not like being a two is negative and that's I think we tend to
No, there are no
focus
bad
on
numbers. Yeah,
right,
there are
right.
no bad numbers. Every type has their baggage or they have their
Right.
core fear. In Enneagram speak, it's the passion or the sin, but we all
Okay.
but every type has their thing for
Yeah.
sure. So there are no bad numbers. There are many ways to group the numbers 1 through 9. One way, or probably the main way, they're called the triads. Twos, threes, and fours are all in the heart triad. Then there is the thinking triad or the head triad. Those are fives, sixes, and sevens. And then the gut triad are eights, nines, and ones.
That's a good segue into 9 because that's one of the numbers that I've always tested very evenly with on a 2. And it's interesting to me that you said that you thought you were a 9 at first. So let's talk a little bit about 9, the peacemaker. They're a conflict avoider.
So nines are typically called the peacemaker. They are at the very top of the Enneagram. So if you look at the diagram, the actual diagram, they're at the top. And it makes sense because they are the peacemaker. They are conflict avoidant, really. They fear a loss or like a separation. Often it looks like disengagement, maybe like sometimes it looks like resignation. Their vice is actually sloth, but it doesn't mean lazy because they are doers. They are in the doing
Mhm.
triad. However, oftentimes it looks like they're doing a lot of things, but they are avoiding what actually needs to be done. They can merge with other people. Like they kind of can go along to get along. They can feel like maybe their opinion doesn't quite matter. So they will retreat or resign and just say, I don't really know what I want, even though they often do.
So it's almost from a boat rocking standpoint, they're probably the least likely to rock the boat, it sounds like.
Although it's
Yeah.
interesting, they can dig their heels in. They can be stubborn about things. So while it looks like they don't have an opinion, they do. They're just not voicing it because,
Okay.
again, they are conflict avoidant. It sometimes looks like passive aggressiveness
Okay.
because they will dig their heels in and be stubborn about something instead of just saying, actually, this is what I want. Because again, they think their voice doesn't matter. However, we know that's not true, right? Their voice absolutely does matter. That's probably the biggest message to nines is your voice does matter. Your opinion matters. What you want matters.
That's interesting, boiling it down to very basic, but twos don't really know what they want, so they don't know how to express that. And then nines know what they want, but they're afraid to express it or reluctant to express it.
Right, right.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, for different reasons. The motivation under nines is that they don't feel like that they matter, but the motivation for twos is always relationships. It's about that worthiness of love.
Okay. Is it possible then that nines have been shut down at some point in their lives or
Yeah, probably the message they received is that you shouldn't assert yourself. You should just be compliant because at the end of the day, your presence doesn't matter. Perhaps that was a childhood message or a message that they somehow received early in life. And maybe they couldn't quite articulate that, but that was the message. It doesn't occur to them sometimes that I would like your opinion. Please be assertive at this moment, right? It doesn't occur to them that other people want to see them.
okay, maybe work on confidence. And I it's just again think about things that I've learned from in between self love and self esteem. There's confidence podcasts out there. I've taken a public speaking course to be able to feel more comfortable in front of a camera or on a stage. Now I feel like I have to go back and spend my next year figuring out exactly where now you're a
Yeah.
7, so what's a 7 all about?
Well, we are, again, part of the thinking triad. We are also like I said, there's another way to group Enneagram numbers. The second way is by stance. And so I share a stance with threes and eights. And so one term is like independent, we can be
Mm,
assertive, that kind of thing. But my core fear basically pain. Everything I do, and a lot of times that shows up as gluttony. Normally, you would associate that word with like food, perhaps.
mhm.
But it's not just a gluttony for things, but it's mostly for experiences. So I am optimistic. I am constantly optimizing my life for a variety of experiences. And really, that is all in an effort to avoid any kind of entrapment or sameness or pain. That's my primary job in life, you could say.
So you really dug deep on what your motivators were to realize how you landed on a 7 versus 9.
Yeah, the seven is nicknamed the enthusiast.
Mm,
I mean, just that memeified characterization alone does describe me. I really did have to go deeper to really identify with that core fear of being deprived or being in pain. And that really helped me identify. Really, it just answered the question of why am I like this?
Mm,
Why do I have a hard time reaching into what I would terms are scary emotions like sadness and grief and loss and disappointment,
mm,
like all of those very essential emotions because they are what make us human. However, it really explains why do I have a hard time connecting, for instance, with my son who is a 4 and he is emotion on top of emotion on top of emotion because that's what fours are. They go to the depths of interiority. And it, could answer those questions for me. Why do I have a hard time sometimes connecting with him and his emotions? And instead of, I don't know, hating on myself, perhaps, it just helped me see these patterns and like how to break them. Like, how
yes.
can I connect with my son? I can stop. I can listen. I can hold space for him, even though it is hard for me to access the emotions to the depth that he does. I can at least allow for them. It took listening to different teachers too, because different teachers sort of emphasize different parts of the Enneagram. Listen to Suzanne's podcast, but also the Around the Circle guys do a great job. I would just listen to different teachers and read different books because they all kind of take a different approach.
There's two things I love that you brought up, and one is that, yeah, this is a way to figure out what makes you tick, what makes you feel wounded, the patterns in your life. And I think, sure, like therapy or any other personality test or any of these things are great, but I've never felt so connected to something as I have with the Enneagram. I kind of put it on the shelf for a while, but then sort of dusted it off because I'm trying to figure out I'm married to an 8. And so twos and eights are like oil and water a
Although
lot of the
you
time.
do share a line with 8, so I would
Yes.
explore that for sure.
Yes, and so it's interesting because as a 2, you have to take things less personally. They're gonna push buttons and they're, 8 is the challenger for those who don't know. So,
Right,
yeah,
and it's
it's
not personal with them.
no.
It is absolutely. In fact, there's an analogy that some people use, like a building could be on fire and an 8 will make an autonomous decision on their own, and it is not something that you could take personally. However, a 2 is gonna take everything personally. And
Yes.
so that is yes. So that
So
is where you 2 can definitely learn so much about yourselves and then where you meet with each other. Absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, and there's one thing I cautioned on the previous episodes, and I'm sure you would say the same, like, you can think somebody is a certain type, but really they need to explore on their own and figure out. So my husband took the test. He tested as a very high as an 8, not like me where I've got, kind of a multi faceted personality. So that's something that whether you're in a friendship or partnership or a marriage and you want to explore or family dynamics like you used it for, I think that's fantastic. So it could be an interesting tool for people to look into to understand how they relate to other people.
Yes. Yeah, and you made a good point. You're not supposed to type other people, even though you think you might know where they lean. You're supposed to let people come to those places on their own. However, again, just learning about the different types, so not just yours. Yes, it's important to learn about yourself, but even to like really learn about the other types too, also can help you answer that question. Not just why do I do what I do? Why do they do what they do and why don't they do it like I do it? Right? It answers that question because guess what? Not everybody's going to do it the way you do it. They're not doing life the way you're doing life. And it just gives you that grace and compassion and all of that for other people. It kind of helps you leave other people alone sometimes too, right? So they
Makes a
can
lot
get
of
to where
sense.
they're going without you like trying to fix them.
I started down this path again last year when I was still leading a team of 5 people. And so just thinking about those aspects of their personalities helped me, like you said, give grace for sure. So This has been as rich of a conversation as I knew it would be, Sondra. I can't
Hope so.
believe we're
I hope so.
we're
I feel like we just like very skimmed the surface. I'm happy to at least like give a little bit of insight on the Enneagram in general and those, two numbers in particular. I've done a lot of coaching in my career, and I've done a lot of consulting and that kind of thing. I would love to do more Enneagram work in the future, but anyone can reach out to me if they have a question about the Enneagram and maybe they need to be pointed to a certain resource. I would be happy to field any kind of questions like that.
Great, great. Well, I will put some information on where people can find you. You have a Substack that you
Yes,
are
I do.
active on. I loved your recent post about zigging when people were zagging. You went back to work after 20 years as a solopreneur, and I'm doing the same thing. So we'll
It's
zig
rough out
together.
there. It's rough out
Yep.
there. More people need to talk about it, really. It's really rough out there.
Yes, I launched this podcast to rock the damn boat of my corporate career, and now here I am, telling everyone like, hey, it's not always going to be the way that you wanted, but to put that effort in and to do everything that you did for so long, all this creative work, it's been brilliant and fun to watch. I always love to close by asking my guests who their boat rocking role model is. So, is there someone that comes to mind for you?
I will tell you that I really admire female eights a lot. If you ever come across a female
Mm.
eight in your life, don't fawn over them because they don't like it. However, observe from afar because eights are fierce and intense and protective and they get shit done. And I really, really admire that. I mean, they really walk their talk. And so again, you're not supposed to type people, but I am also from Texas and I am pretty immersed into Texas politics right now. And somebody I really looked up to and still do, even though they are an ancestor, is Ann Richards, our governor
Mm.
Ann Richards, who was our Democratic governor several years ago. She is somebody who I think rocked the boat in every way. She broke a lot of barriers. And just being a female governor in Texas, I mean, just imagine. And it really, I mean, it doesn't, I guess, even matter what party you affiliate with or if you're just independent. She is, I would hope, somebody that would be admirable to anyone based on her resume and accomplishments.
Yes. Oh, she is a great example. And of course, again, being from Texas, I know exactly who you're talking about. But I think back to being in school and her being our governor, and I think you're just modeling that a woman could be the governor of Texas.
Absolutely.
Any woman in a high position just helps model for whether it's politician or any other type of career. It's just you get to see that as a shining example. So love that. Great. Well, Sandra, it's so great having you. I look forward to the
I
next time
enjoyed
we
it
we get to
so
see each
much.
other. Well, everyone, thanks for listening to the show and have a great rest of your week.
You've been listening to Rock the Damn Boat, a podcast produced and recorded by Christy Hughes. You can follow, subscribe on both Apple and Spotify, and your 5-star review goes a long way. Thank you so much for your support of the show.